Hello and welcome back. In this video we're going to go through part 1 of 2 of refinishing this toolbox. This is the condition I found it in: missing handles, pretty beat up, rusted, scraped paint. First step I'm taking here is some Citric Strip just to take off the first of that old paint. This stuff is not sponsored, great to use, it's safe, smells good, and it's not as toxic as some of those other chemicals for stripping paint. Just apply liberally to all areas you want to strip your paint from. Let it sit for 12 hours or so and then come back and scrape it off. The deterioration on this particular piece, I actually went back 2 or 3 times applying and stripping, but I only show one for the interest of time. The stuff works pretty good though for being environmentally friendly. This is the next day, picking it up 12-18 hours later or so. You can see the paint already starting to flake off, and if you come through with a scraper you can knock most of it off with one application. I use a paint scraper for most of it, but I transition to like a window sticker remover, a couple of the tools, whatever seems to work to get the best results. I left the hardware on in this step just because I wanted to strip the paint off that and kind of see what I was working with. The handles here, as you can see, were ripped off when I found it, and they've been that way for as long as I can remember. And funny enough, the rivets didn't fail, it was actually the handles themselves. The handles as well, the handles had some leftover paint and rust on them, so I wanted to get a first strip before I went through and cleaned them individually. Here's the locking mechanism. The key has been missing for as long as I can remember, but it gave me the correct part to order for a new one. So I kept that safe. Leaving the Citric Strip on too long actually causes it to harden and kind of gives you more of a mess than the ability to strip. So I wouldn't leave it on for more than 18 hours or so at the most. You can see how easily the paint comes off with just that first application. The inside was pretty beat up. This is the top drawer. You can see the metal's bent, tons of old debris and stuff in there. Just getting it nice and cleaned out so I can light sand and see what I'm dealing with. Jumping down to the drawers, we can remove this old tool mat, which is basically paper thin after 30 odd years of use. Clean out the bottom drawer, vacuum out the rest of that debris. This is an interesting technique I'm going to show here to remove these friction drawer slides. That first one, the latch didn't catch, but this one here does. You can see there's a little nub in there that catches, which prevents the drawer from coming out all the way. Using a hacksaw blade with a little bend on the end, you're able to push it in front of it and bypass that, which allows you to remove it easily without any special tools. Here's a close-up of that same procedure. You can see just pushing it on the inside of that and allowing it not to catch. That's how you can remove those easily without anything special. Drilling out the rivets here from the handles so I can remove them. Just enough to knock them down and then tap them out with a punch. And I repeated this for all the drawers. There you go, it pops the handle right off. Some of those rivets, as you saw, didn't come out of the handles, just the drawers. So I had to go back in with an anvil and a punch and just remove them fully from the handles so they can be cleaned and reused. Doesn't take much force and you can remove them all pretty quickly. You can see how beat up those and rusty those handles are after all those years of neglect. Stickers on the inside of toolboxes, I know it's a common practice, but for someone trying to restore them, it's a huge nuisance. So first I come at it with the paint scraper and got okay results. I end up switching to a window scraper that you'd use for your registration or title, and that gave better results. It's always best to jump around between tools and see what works best for each situation. Some of the ones that were a little more stubborn, I actually used some mineral spirits and just soaked them with it, and then came back through and they came off a little easier. In hindsight, I should have did that from the start, but I didn't think of it. This is a pretty tedious process, but it's necessary to get a good finish at the end. Just light sanding some of the lighter rust spots off here just to see the surface. If there's any paint left on it, just gives a better view of what you're working with. You can see how beat up the toolbox is now that it's somewhat stripped. There's a lot of dents and dings in it. The inside looks like it held water at some point, which there's substantial rust in there. The inside I wasn't going for a perfect restoration, just enough to clean it up because I will be putting those drawer pads back in. So the flat faces I wasn't as concerned with as the sides. Now hitting it with a wire wheel just to further pull some of that rust out. Just another tool to start digging into that surface and seeing how bad those dings are. Helps prep it for the Bondo. You can see that corner in that shot there. That was the most troublesome part of the whole project, was that corner. My guess is that the handles ripped off at some point and fell, and that corner took the brunt of the fall. So patching that and fixing it was quite the effort. You can see in these quick time lapses how that rust is removed. It gives a pretty good view of what these tools are doing. Then we go to the bench grinder to get the fronts of the drawers done. These I wanted to have a perfect finish on, and it was easiest to accomplish with the bench grinder, so I went through it and hit all the drawers. My main concern was that front cap, the side that you see and those two end pieces that wrap around. I wasn't as concerned with the rest of the sides as they won't be seen, and that paint was in pretty good shape to be recoated. The bench grinder makes pretty short work of these drawers, stripping the paint off. We'll pick it up in part 2 with Bondo, paint, and reassembly. Thanks for watching.